with the usual mix of designer outfits, competitive humblebrags and thinly veiled insults served alongside the turkey. I sat quietly at the far end of the table watching my relatives showcase their supposed success. "My boutique just had its best quarter ever," Aunt Karen announced, brandishing her wine glass. "The Riverside Mall location is perfect for my upscale clientele." Uncle Robert nodded approvingly. "Premium retail space is everything. Speaking of which," he turned to me with his familiar condescending smile, "how's that little shop of yours doing, Sarah?" "The bookstore's doing fine," I replied, checking my phone as another lease agreement notification came in. They had no idea that Riverside Mall, along with 15 other shopping centers in the region, was owned by my property management company, Phoenix Holdings. "A bookstore," Cousin Jessica snickered. "In this economy? How quaint." My phone buzzed again. "Lease renewal evaluations complete for Riverside Mall. Awaiting your approval for final decisions. You should consider selling," Aunt Karen advised. "My boutique could use the space for expansion. I know the mall management personally. I could put in a good word." I suppressed a smile, remembering how she tried to negotiate a rent reduction last month with my property managers. The request had landed on my desk, filed under entitled tenants. "That's thoughtful of you," I said, serving myself more potatoes. "But I'm comfortable with my business decisions." "Comfortable isn't ambitious," Uncle Robert declared. "Look at your cousins, Jessica's law practice, Michael's finance career. Even Karen's boutique is a real business." My mother shot me an apologetic look. She was the only one who knew about Phoenix Holdings and she'd kept my secret faithfully. After all, information was power and I'd learned the value of staying underestimated. "Speaking of business," Aunt Karen continued, "I'm negotiating an amazing deal for a second location. The mall management practically begs me to expand." I checked my watch. In exactly 20 minutes, her lease renewal terms would arrive by courier, terms that reflected her store's actual performance, not her inflated claims. "How interesting," I murmured, sending a quick text to my office. "Proceed with delivery. Sometimes the best seat at the table is the one where you can watch everything unfold." "More wine, anyone?" I offered, knowing the evening was about to get much more interesting. The doorbell rang just as Aunt Karen launched into another story about her exclusive clientele. Mom gave me a knowing look as she went to answer it. "Miss Karen Parker?" A courier's voice carried from the foyer. "Priority delivery from Riverside Mall Management." The conversation at the table paused. Aunt Karen frowned, setting down her wine glass. "On Thanksgiving? That's odd." "Business never sleeps," Uncle Robert said approvingly, still oblivious to whose business was actually running things. My phone discreetly displayed the lease renewal terms I'd approved earlier. A 40% rent increase, based on her store's actual sales data versus her reported figures. The personal relationship she claimed to have with mall management hadn't noticed years of creative accounting. "Probably just congratulating me on my success," Aunt Karen preened, opening the envelope. Her face fell as she read the contents. "This must be a mistake," she sputtered. They wouldn't." Jessica peered over her mother's shoulder, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "Let me see that." "Problems?" Uncle Robert inquired, fork paused halfway to his mouth. "They're raising the rent." Aunt Karen's voice climbed an octave. "And demanding a full audit of sales records." My phone buzzed again. Second courier en route with notices for remaining tenant violations. "Maybe you should talk to your personal contacts in management," I suggested innocently, helping myself to more cranberry sauce. "I will." She grabbed her phone, scrolling frantically through contacts. "This is ridiculous. My boutique is the anchor store of that wing." I took a sip of water, knowing her calls would go straight to voicemail. The property managers had strict instructions about holiday boundaries. Except for pre-approved deliveries, of course. "The market's been changing," I offered. "Commercial real estate can be unpredictable. What would you know about it?" Jessica snapped. "You run a tiny bookstore." The doorbell rang again. Mom caught my eye before going to answer it. Sometimes the best business lessons come served with turkey. "More deliveries?" Michael asked. "On Thanksgiving?" Like Uncle Robert said, I smiled. Business never sleeps. The second courier arrived with a thicker envelope. this one marked with Phoenix Holdings' discreet logo. For Ms. Karen Parker and Mr. Robert Parker, he announced. Uncle Robert frowned. Phoenix Holdings? Never heard of them. You wouldn't have, I said, finally setting down my fork. We prefer to operate quietly, though we do own most of the commercial real estate in the region. The room went silent except for the sound of tearing paper as they opened their envelopes. This is. Uncle Robert's voice faltered as he read. This is a complete audit notice for all tenant businesses in Phoenix Holdings properties. Including my law office, Jessica realized, her face paling as she recognized the implications. Her prestigious practice occupied the top floor of another Phoenix-owned building. But who? Aunt Karen's eyes narrowed, darting between the letters and me. Sarah. I pulled out my tablet, projecting Phoenix Holdings' portfolio onto the dining room wall. 16 shopping centers, 12 office complexes, and various other commercial properties, including every building that housed a Parker family business. That tiny bookstore you love to mock? I smiled. It's the public face of my real estate empire. We needed a test location for our retail analytics software. You. Uncle Robert sputtered. You own Riverside Mall. And the building where Jessica overcharges her clients, I confirmed. By the way, your creative billing practices triggered our audit algorithms months ago. Jessica's wine glass tipped over, staining her designer blouse. You can't audit your business practices? Actually, it's in the lease agreement you signed without reading. Article 7, Paragraph 3. I quoted from memory. Right after the clause about maintaining accurate sales records, Aunt Karen. Mom started clearing plates, hiding her smile. She'd watched me build Phoenix Holdings from the ground up, using the bookstore as both cover and testing ground for our retail management systems. But you're just. Aunt Karen gestured weakly at my simple outfit. You wear Target clothes. Because I understand the value of staying underestimated, I explained. While you were busy bragging about your exclusive boutique, I was buying the building it sits in. My phone buzzed with another update. Audit team ready to proceed on Monday. This is a joke, Uncle Robert declared. Some kind of Thanksgiving prank. Check your email, I suggested. The property management team sent formal notifications an hour ago. Though they probably went to your spam folder, given how often you ignore correspondence from lower-level business contacts. They all grabbed their phones, faces growing increasingly horrified as reality sank in. The lease renewal, Aunt Karen whispered, reflects your actual sales figures, not the ones you've been reporting, I finished. We've had AI monitoring every transaction since I bought the mall 3 years ago. The turkey grew cold as my family's warm facade of superiority crumbled. The audit starts Monday, I continued, calmly serving myself a slice of pumpkin pie. We'll be reviewing every transaction, every lease agreement, and every creative accounting entry. You can't do this to family, Uncle Robert protested, his face now matching the cranberry sauce. Family. I set down my dessert fork. Like when you told me opening a bookstore was throwing away my potential? Or when Aunt Karen tried to pressure my store out of the mall to expand her boutique. Jessica, the lawyer, was frantically reviewing the lease documents. These terms, they're ironclad. Of course they are, I smiled. I wrote them. While you were mocking my little shop, I was building the largest commercial real estate analytics platform in the region. My phone displayed another update. Tenant compliance review complete. Violations documented in sectors 3, 7, and 12. The boutique is my life, Aunt Karen whispered, mascara starting to run. And now it's my tenant, I corrected. One that's been underreporting sales to avoid percentage rent payments. The audit should be illuminating. Mom returned with coffee, setting a cup in front of me with a knowing smile. She'd watched me spend years developing the property management AI that had caught their violations. Your lease renewals will depend on the audit results, I explained. Though I'm willing to be reasonable, under certain conditions. Name them, Uncle Robert said quickly. I pulled out my tablet again, displaying their various violations. Jessica's inflated billing hours, Aunt Karen's creative bookkeeping, Uncle Robert's unauthorized subletting. First, you'll pay back all underreported rent with interest. They winced collectively. Second, you'll implement our new point-of-sale systems for complete transaction transparency. But my clients, Jessica started, will appreciate the honest billing, I finished. And finally, I gestured around the dining room, where they'd spent years holding court as the successful ones. You'll remember this Thanksgiving every time you write your rent checks. The day you learn that real success isn't about looking important. It's about being smart enough to see opportunities others miss. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. And if we refuse? Then I'll have to find new tenants, I said simply. I hear Barnes & Noble is looking to expand. Aunt Karen gasped. You wouldn't. The same way you wouldn't try to force my bookstore out? I countered. Business is business, Aunt Karen. You taught me that, remember? My phone lit up with the final report of the day. Tenant compliance systems updated. New monitoring protocols active. Happy Thanksgiving, I stood gathering my things. The audit team will arrive at 9 a.m. Monday. I'd suggest spending the weekend organizing your records rather than shopping for designer labels. Sarah, Mom called as I reached the door. Don't forget the leftover turkey. Thanks, Mom, I smiled. I'll have lunch with the audit team on Monday. Looking back at the shell-shocked faces around the dinner table, I added, Oh, and Aunt Karen? That expansion space you wanted? I'm turning it into a reading room for my bookstore. Sometimes small businesses do think big. The drive home was peaceful, my phone quiet except for one message from Mom. Best Thanksgiving ever. In my rearview mirror, I could see lights still on at the house, imagining the frantic conversations and desperate phone calls. They'd spend the weekend discovering just how thoroughly their small business relative had outmaneuvered them. Monday would bring new leases, strict oversight, and a complete reorganization of their commercial fiefdoms. But more importantly, it would bring something they'd never expected. Respect. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with an audit notice and a side of humble pie. My bookstore's lights glowed warmly as I pulled into my reserved spot. The only business in the mall still open on Thanksgiving. Inside, customers browsed peacefully, unaware that the quiet owner who recommended books also owned the building and everything around it. Just the way I liked it. After all, the biggest empires are often built in plain sight while everyone else is too busy showing off to notice. I settled into my favorite reading chair, surrounded by books and success, and opened my laptop to review Monday's audit schedule. On my screen, a message flashed from the property management AI. Tenant violations in Sector 3 increasing. Recommend immediate review. Sector 3, Aunt Karen's Boutique. I smiled, typing a quick response. Flag for Monday's audit. Some lessons